I was 12 when I first realized I was invisible. Not literally, of course. My name is Hazel, and that day, I'd spent 3 hours meticulously crafting a miniature hydroponic farm for my school's science fair. It had working pumps, intricate tubing, miniature LED grow lights powered by a small solar panel I'd scavenged from an old garden fixture, and tiny basil plants already sprouting vibrant green. I'd figured it all out from countless library books, dog-eared scientific journals I'd found online, and late nights poring over complex engineering diagrams. I was so proud, practically vibrating with excitement, as I waited for Mom and Dad to come see it. The basil, already fragrant, promised a tiny, self-sustaining ecosystem right there on our kitchen counter. But they didn't come for me. They burst through the front door. Not for me, but for Leo. My 10-year-old brother Leo had apparently scored the winning point in his youth robotics competition. The celebration was immediate and deafening. Dad, Richard, hoisted him onto his shoulders, roaring with pride. His face flushed with unadulterated joy. Mom Eleanor took a million photos, her phone flashing, tears of pure happiness streaming down her face. Neighbors were called over to hear the thrilling play-by-play of Leo's engineering brilliance, his quick thinking under pressure. They spoke of his natural aptitude and innate talent. My carefully constructed hydroponic farm sat forgotten on the kitchen table, its tiny basil leaves wilting slightly under the harsh fluorescent kitchen light, overshadowed by the boisterous fanfare for Leo. "Oh, that's nice, sweetie," Mom had said later when I finally managed to get her attention, barely glancing at my intricate setup. Her eyes, still shining from Leo's triumph, skimmed over my painstaking work without truly seeing it. "Very green. Are those herbs?" Her gaze was already drifting back to Leo, who was now dramatically reenacting his victory, complete with exaggerated sound effects and animated gestures, drawing peals of laughter from the assembled neighbors. 19 years later, sitting at this same reclaimed wood kitchen table in my parents' upscale Portland home, I was watching the exact same scene play out. Different props, same script, just with higher stakes and a much more polished performance from Leo. "So, the market for bioengineered supercrops is about to explode, Mom," Leo declared, gesturing wildly with his fork, nearly impaling a piece of artisan sourdough toast that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He was 29 now, my brother. Still handsome, still charming, still utterly devoid of any actual business acumen, but overflowing with unearned confidence. I'm talking a complete transformation of global food production, vertical farms in every city, synthetic meats that taste better than prime rib, nutrient solutions that can grow anything anywhere, even on Mars. The whole green revolution package. Dad leaned forward, his face alight with an almost childlike wonder, his brow furrowed with delighted concentration, as if Leo were revealing the secrets of the universe, not just rehashing a thinly researched business proposal. "How much are we talking about investing, son? 200,000 to start? Maybe 300 to really make it sing? We could probably swing that from the investment fund." Mom clasped her hands together, her eyes shining with blind faith. "Oh, Leo, you're so brilliant. Just like your father was at your age, darling. Always ahead of the curve, always seeing the big picture." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my organic kombucha, trying not to roll my eyes so hard they'd fall out. Leo, bless his ambitious but utterly incompetent heart, had exactly 0 successful business ventures under his belt. His last brilliant idea was a sustainable mushroom farm that mysteriously sprouted an aggressive, virulent mold instead of fungi, quickly spreading a foul, earthy odor throughout the neighborhood and costing Mom and Dad a cool 50 grand in initial investment and cleanup fees. Before that, there was the artisanal vegan cheese company that tasted suspiciously like old socks and was shut down by the health department after 4 months due to repeated health code violations. Then, the eco-friendly drone delivery service that, during its maiden flight, crashed spectacularly into a neighbor's prize-winning rose garden, resulting in a lawsuit. Each failure, a hefty sum extracted from my parents' retirement savings, Each failure met with indulgent sighs and declarations of learning experiences, never truly acknowledged as catastrophic losses. What about regulatory hurdles? I asked, my voice calm, practical, cutting through the self-congratulatory haze. FDA approvals? Patent infringements from existing biotech companies? Have you actually researched the biosecurity protocols for this kind of large-scale genetic engineering? Are you considering cross-contamination risks? The table went quiet. 3 pairs of eyes, moms, dads, and Leo turned to me like I'd just suggested we sacrifice a goat on the gleaming granite countertop. The air thickened with unspoken disapproval. Hazel, Dad said, in that patient, slightly exasperated tone he reserved for when I was being difficult or overly analytical. Let your brother explain his vision. Don't you always say you're all about innovation? You're so quick to poke holes. I am all about innovation, I replied, keeping my voice even, refusing to be drawn into their predictable script. I'm just asking practical questions. Building a biotech empire isn't like selling gourmet grilled cheese, Leo. The stakes are a little higher than a health department fine. There are actual legal ramifications, not just for you, but for our parents' assets. Leo, completely ignoring my pointed questions, puffed out his chest and continued, undeterred, as if I hadn't spoken. The beauty of this opportunity, Hazel, is that I've got insider information. A buddy of mine works for the city's Green Development Initiative. This entire field is about to be flooded with investment. We're getting in on the ground floor, pre-IPO. Insider information. I repeated, setting down my kombucha glass a little harder than necessary. The sharp clink echoed in the sudden silence, drawing their attention back to me. That sounds like cutting corners, Leo, and potentially illegal depending on the nature of this information. It's called smart business, Hazel, Mom interrupted, her voice sharp, dismissive of my concerns. Leo's always been so good at networking. Of course he has. Leo could charm a scientist into funding his wildest dreams. You just don't understand how the real world works, darling. Meanwhile, I, Hazel, had been working as a senior data analyst at a major environmental consulting firm for 8 years. I'd steadily climbed from junior analyst to senior project lead, specializing in supply chain optimization for sustainable agriculture and resource management. My work involved dissecting incredibly complex data sets, identifying critical inefficiencies in global food systems, and proposing innovative, data-driven solutions for real-world environmental problems. I was good at it. Very good. My analyses had saved major corporations millions and significantly reduced their carbon footprints. My parents, however, still introduced me at social gatherings as our daughter who's really good with, numbers and graphs, very reliable with the details. Actually, I said, interjecting before the conversation could swing back to Leo's self-proclaimed genius, I've been thinking about some investment opportunities myself. There are some really interesting vertical farm startups in the Seattle area, particularly those exploring advanced nutrient delivery systems and automated crop management. I watch their faces for any sign of genuine interest, any glimmer of pride. Oh, sweetie, Mom said, reaching over and patting my hand, her touch faint comfort, as if I were still 12 and presenting a crayon drawing. Her eyes held that familiar, distant amusement. Biotech is so risky, and you have such a stable job. Why would you want to jeopardize that? And honestly, you're not really the entrepreneurial type, are you? You're so analytical. So methodical. You thrive in structured environments, darling. So reliable. The unspoken words hung in the air, a familiar refrain echoing from childhood. So predictable. So safe. So, not Leo. Because maybe I want more than stable, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but my conviction unwavering, like bedrock beneath shifting sand. Speaking of which, Dad interrupted, abruptly changing the subject, his face suddenly serious, almost solemn. We need to talk to you about something important here, Hazel. Something for the family. Here it comes. I could see it in their faces, that mixture of forced cheerfulness and carefully disguised guilt that meant they were about to ask me for something significant while pretending it was for my own good or for the greater good of the family legacy. "We've decided to take out a second mortgage on the house," Mom said, her voice a little too bright, a little too strained, avoiding eye contact, "to help fund Leo's project. It's a bridge loan, just until the Series A funding comes through." The words hit me like a physical slap. The house. Their home. The only tangible asset they truly owned. The place where all my childhood memories, good and bad, were stored. The foundation of their supposed financial security. "You're mortgaging the family home?" My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. A thin shield over a raging storm. "It's an investment in all our futures, Hazel," Dad said, his eyes still avoiding mine, fixed instead on a spot just above my head. His tone was firm, a desperate attempt at conviction. "When Leo's development takes off, we'll all benefit. Just imagine, a new legacy for the family, a multi-million-dollar biotech conglomerate that will put us on the map." "And what if it doesn't take off?" I asked, my voice rising slightly despite myself, the shield beginning to crack. "What if it fails? Like the mushroom farm, or the artisanal vegan cheese business, or the drone delivery service?" Leo's face flushed a furious, indignant red. "Those were learning experiences," he spluttered, his voice cracking with outrage. "Minor setbacks, proof of concept in a nascent market. Learning experiences that cost Mom and Dad hundreds of thousands of dollars each time," I retorted, my composure finally shattering like fragile glass. "Learning experiences that emptied their savings, postponed their retirement, and forced them to put off their dream trip to Italy. Learning experiences that are now jeopardizing the very roof over their heads, their entire financial stability." "Hazel!" Dad's voice carried a sharp warning, cutting me off. His eyes finally met mine, filled with a cold parental disapproval. "Your brother is trying to build something here. The least you can do is be supportive. You're being incredibly negative." Supportive, right? Like I'd been my whole life, watching from the sidelines while they poured money, praise, and boundless attention into Leo's fleeting, ill-conceived dreams, while treating mine like cute hobbies, like charming little quirks of their reliable daughter. Something to be indulged, but never taken seriously. "Of course I'm supportive," I lied, the bitter taste of resentment rising in my mouth. "I just think we should be realistic about the risks, especially when the house is on the line." "That's why we need you to stay grounded, honey," Mom said, her tone saccharine sweet, her arm slipping around my shoulder in a falsely comforting, possessive gesture. Her smile was tight, brittle. "Someone in this family needs to keep their feet on the ground. You're our safety net, darling. Our reliable one. Our insurance policy against everything else." She patted my arm, a subtle pat that conveyed both affection and a clear expectation of my role. Their safety net, their backup plan, never their first choice, never their pride and joy, just their insurance policy against Leo's inevitable, spectacular failures. The thought settled deep in my core, a cold, hard ember. I smiled and nodded and helped clear the dishes, playing my role perfectly. The good daughter. The responsible one. The one who would pick up the pieces when everything fell apart, without complaint, without recognition. But later that night, alone in my small, rented apartment in the bustling inner-city district of Portland, an apartment deliberately chosen for its anonymity and distance from my parents' suburban bubble, I opened my laptop and started researching not property, listings, but biotech startups. Specifically, disruptive innovations in sustainable agriculture. I bypassed the popular news sites and dove deep into academic journals, patent databases, and highly specialized industry reports. I'd been saving money for years, living modestly while my parents funded Leo's fantasies. Every bonus, every pay raise, every penny I could squirrel away. I lived within my means, invested wisely in stable, diversified portfolios, and quietly built my own nest egg, far from their prying questions or Leo's grasping hands. I had enough for a significant investment, maybe two, if I was careful. They wanted me to be their safety net? Fine. But this time, I was building my own foundation first. And they would never see me coming. Hazel, can you cross-reference these environmental impact reports and have them ready for Mr. Peterson by lunch? And please, triple-check the data on the anaerobic digestion model. We can't afford any errors. Of course, Mr. Peterson, I replied, taking the thick stack of papers from my boss with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Another thrilling day at Evergreen Environmental Solutions, where my biggest challenge was keeping the complex data models error-free and remembering which partner liked their climate change reports bound versus stapled. Let them think I was just the reliable senior analyst who kept their operations running smoothly. They had no idea that last night, I'd spent 3 hours analyzing venture capital funding rounds for vertical farming tech and drafting a preliminary business plan for a synthetic nutrient solution that could feed a city. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Aris Thorne. Coffee after work? Found 3 more promising candidates for the enzyme sequencing. The preliminary results are astonishing. Dr. Thorne was the only person who truly knew what I was doing. We'd met 2 years ago at a Sustainable Innovation Conference, where he was presenting a poster on experimental plant genomics. He was a brilliant but disillusioned biochemist, an expert in plant genomics and cellular agriculture, whose groundbreaking research had been consistently underfunded by cautious university grants and stifled by bureaucratic red tape. I was then just an anonymous attendee, fascinated by his radical ideas that were far too ambitious for the academic world. I approached him after his lecture, not with a proposal for investment, but with an offer to help him secure data, identify market gaps, and streamline his research for practical application. We started with small clandestine meetings in quiet coffee shops, sketching out complex molecular structures and business models on napkins. He brought the cutting-edge science, I brought the strategic vision, the methodical execution, and eventually the initial capital. Our collaboration blossomed into something extraordinary. I wasn't just funding his research. I was helping him build a company from the ground up, brick by invisible brick. A company that would revolutionize the way food was grown, consumed, and sustained. We called it Viridian Biotech. We operated in extreme stealth, filing patents under a web of shell corporations, setting up our initial lab in a discreet, anonymous industrial park on the outskirts of Seattle, far from the prying eyes of the Portland tech scene my parents frequented. We recruited a small, fiercely loyal team of brilliant scientists and engineers who shared our vision to create a sustainable future, one genetically optimized crop, and one revolutionary nutrient solution at a time. Every team member was vetted, not just for their expertise, but for their discretion and commitment to our mission. For 3 years, I led a double life. By day, I was the diligent, predictable data analyst, churning out reports and attending mind-numbing meetings. By night, I was Hazel Vance, CEO and co-founder of a burgeoning biotech startup, navigating complex scientific challenges, intense legal battles over intellectual property, and high-stakes negotiations with suppliers and early investors. I sacrificed almost everything. My social life dwindled to almost nothing. My sleep became a luxury. Any semblance of a personal hobby outside of Viridian was abandoned. My apartment became a glorified crash pad. My entire being was consumed by Viridian, fueled by a relentless drive to prove myself, not just to my family, but to the industry, to the world. Our breakthrough came with the development of a proprietary nutrient solution, which we named VitaGrow. It wasn't just a fertilizer. It was a bioengineered liquid that could deliver precise, optimized nutrients directly to plant roots in vertical farms, drastically increasing yields and growth rates while reducing water consumption by an astounding 95% compared to traditional farming. It was a game changer, a technological leap that promised to solve global food scarcity. The initial tests in our prototype facility were so successful, so mind-bogglingly efficient, that we knew we had a golden ticket, a true disruptive force. The first major investment came from a shadowy venture capital firm, Nexus Innovations, known for backing audacious, disruptive technologies that operated off the radar. They were drawn in by our unparalleled data, the sheer audacity of our vision, and the watertight secrecy of our operation. They demanded complete discretion, and I, eager to maintain my stealth operation and avoid premature scrutiny, readily agreed. The funding allowed us to scale rapidly, building our first fully automated vertical farm prototype in a massive nondescript warehouse outside Tacoma. We installed advanced robotics, AI-driven climate controls, and thousands of Vita grow-fed plants that thrived in an optimal, controlled environment. By the time I was 28, Viridian Biotech was no longer a startup. We had quietly secured multiple foundational patents, developed a fully automated cultivation system powered by cutting-edge AI, and had our VitaGrow solution ready for commercial deployment on an industrial scale. Our valuation, based on our intellectual property and early market projections, had soared. We were on the cusp of announcing our public launch, a moment that would shake the entire agricultural, tech, and even real estate industries. And then came the fateful phone call from Mom. "Hazel, darling, we have a little situation," she began, her voice carefully modulated, trying to project a calm she clearly didn't feel. But I could hear the desperate tremor beneath the practiced composure, the brittle edge of fear. Leo's latest venture. Well, it ran into some rather unexpected challenges. A few unfortunate regulatory delays, and a rather substantial fine from the EPA. It seems the organic waste disposal wasn't quite as organic as he thought. I closed my eyes, taking a deep, fortifying breath. Here it is. The inevitable, the predictable, the moment I'd been bracing for. "How much?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. A cold, hard slab of marble. "Just a few million." It seems the second mortgage wasn't quite enough to cover the initial investment and these unforeseen setbacks. And the bank is threatening to foreclose on the house if we don't come up with a significant sum by the end of the month. They're being very uncooperative. "How much is significant?" I pressed, refusing to let her obscure the truth with vague euphemisms. A long, agonizing pause. "750,000, darling." And quickly, by next Friday, to be precise. I felt a cold, hard knot of satisfaction tighten in my stomach. 750,000. A drop in the ocean compared to Viridian's latest valuation, which was now well over $1.5 billion after securing our final round of private equity funding just last week. And what exactly did Leo's supercrops do to get an EPA fine of that magnitude? I asked, my tone dangerously neutral, my mind already picturing the contaminated waterways. Mom sighed dramatically, as if she were the victim of an unfair universe. "Oh, just some accidental runoff into the local river. Nothing major, darling. A simple misunderstanding about waste disposal. It was all so complicated. The regulations are simply Byzantine for these cutting-edge industries, you see. A simple misunderstanding. Leo, the self-proclaimed green visionary, had polluted a river. My brother, who preached sustainability and ecological responsibility, had cut corners and created an ecological disaster that could have long-term consequences for the local ecosystem. The irony was so stark, so utterly nauseating, it almost made me laugh out loud, a harsh, bitter sound. "So, you need me to bail you out," I stated. Not a question, but a cold, hard declaration of fact. "Well, darling, you're our reliable one," Mom said, her voice regaining its saccharine sweetness, as if nothing catastrophic had happened. "Our safety net. We always knew we could count on you. You have that stable job, all that money you've saved." "Right." I cut her off, my voice laced with a subtle sarcasm that I knew would go right over her head. "The money from my stable job as a data analyst. The one you said was too risky and not entrepreneurial when I wanted to invest it years ago. The one you told me to stick to because I wasn't the type for big risks. Don't be difficult, Hazel." Dad's voice boomed from the background, a familiar attempt to regain control of a rapidly deteriorating situation. This is a family crisis. We need you to step up. It's the least you can do. And Leo? I asked, my eyes narrowing. Is he stepping up too? Or is he still exploring his options? He's exploring his options. Mom hedged, her voice suddenly tight. He's devastated, of course. His dream shattered. He's going through a lot right now. His dream, my nightmare. My parents' hard-earned savings flushed down the drain again and again. And now they're home. My childhood home. All for Leo's latest pipe dream. His endless cycle of catastrophic failures. I'll be there in an hour, I said, my voice resonating with an unshakable resolve. I hung up before they could reply, before they could offer another excuse or another veiled insult. My decision was made. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about finally drawing a line, etching it deep into the sand. This was about revealing the truth, not just for them, but for myself. For the 12-year-old girl with a wilting basil. I immediately called Dr. Eris Thorne, my brilliant co-founder. Eris, move up the public announcement. I want Viridian's launch to hit every major news outlet by tomorrow morning, precisely at 6 a.m. Pacific. And I'm scheduling a press conference for 10 a.m. local time at our main R&D facility. Get the legal team ready for the barrage. Hazel, are you sure? Eris asked, his voice cautious, a rare tremor in his usually steady demeanor. We were planning for next month, a more controlled rollout, a staggered media strategy. I'm sure, I said, my voice cold and hard, leaving no room for argument. It's time to show them what a safety net truly looks like. A safety net made of steel, not string. The next morning, the digital world exploded with the news. Viridian Biotech, the $1.5 billion sustainable agriculture innovator, emerges from stealth mode. Mysterious female founder revealed as Coxicum Mentawitexan-year-old Hazel Vance, industry data analyst. Vanguard of vertical farming unveils revolutionary Vitagrow solution set to end global hunger. My face, previously hidden behind an anonymous corporate logo and carefully crafted unglamorous stock photos, was suddenly everywhere. Forbes, Bloomberg, TechCrunch, The Wall Street Journal. My meticulously curated anonymity was shattered, replaced by headlines that screamed my success, my age, my incredible net worth, $1.5 billion. And that was just the initial valuation from Nexus. The market was already reacting, the stock soaring, analysts predicting a meteoric rise. My face, once just good with numbers, was now the face of a burgeoning empire. At 9 a.m., exactly 1 hour before the press conference, I arrived at my parents' home in a sleek, unmarked electric sedan. The house, usually a bastion of quiet, upper-middle-class comfort, was in utter chaos. Cardboard boxes, hastily packed and poorly taped, were haphazardly stacked in the living room. Legal documents, emblazoned with bank logos and ominous red stamps, littered the coffee table. A stark white eviction notice was taped to the front door, a chilling beacon of their desperation. Leo was pacing furiously in the dining room, red-faced, screaming into his phone, likely blaming someone else for his predicament. Mom sat slumped on the sofa, clutching a crumpled tissue, her mascara-streaked face a picture of despair. Dad, looking utterly defeated, stared blankly at the wall, his shoulders slumped, his once firm jaw slack. They looked up when I walked in, their faces a mixture of desperation and fleeting, almost pathetic relief. "Hazel, darling, thank God you're here," Mom sobbed, rising unsteadily to her feet, her arms outstretched to embrace me. "We need that money, darling, now. The bank just called again. They said they're sending the sheriff this afternoon." I gently disengaged from her hug, taking a step back, maintaining a professional distance. "I know," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly serene, a stark contrast to the maelstrom around me. "I'm here about the house, and about a few other things." Leo slammed down his phone, his eyes blazing with self-pity and entitlement. "What took you so long, Hazel? Do you have the money? I told them you were reliable." that you'd come through for the family. I'm always reliable, Leo, I said, my gaze sweeping over the chaotic room, over the scattered boxes, the looming eviction, and their palpable despair. But I'm not just here with money. I'm here with a truth that you were all too busy to see. I pulled out my phone, opening the news app. The screen glowed with my face, plastered across the homepage of every major financial publication. The headline, in bold, aggressive lettering, screamed, "Hazel Vance, the billion-dollar biotic visionary, set to revolutionize global food supply." A photograph of our gleaming, state-of-the-art vertical farm prototype filled the background, its automated robotic arms meticulously tending rows of vibrant, genetically optimized crops. I held it out to them, allowing the stark reality of the headlines to sink in. They stared at the screen, their eyes widening in disbelief, then horror, then a dawning, terrible comprehension. Mom's jaw dropped, her tears momentarily forgotten. Dad's face turned an ashen white as if he'd seen a ghost. Leo, for the first time in his life, was utterly speechless, his mouth agape like a landed fish, his earlier bluster completely deflated. A chilling silence descended, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. This is a trick," Mom stammered, her voice barely a whisper, a desperate attempt to deny the undeniable. "This isn't you, Hazel. This is some imposter, some fabricated story." "It is me, Mom," I said, my voice unwavering, a steel rod wrapped in velvet. "Hazel Vance, CEO and co-founder of Viridian Biotech, the company that just went public this morning with a valuation of over $1.5 billion. I gestured to the headlines on the phone, then around the room at their desperate faces. "That's billion with a B. And that reliable data analyst salary you thought I was living on? That was just my cover. My real work was building this, in stealth, for 3 years, while you were busy funding Leo's learning experiences and calling me your safety net, while you were mortgaging your home for his latest, most disastrous vision." Leo finally found his voice, a strangled, furious sound laced with wounded pride. You've been doing this all this time? While we were struggling? While I was trying to build my dream, my legacy for the family? Your dream just polluted a river, Leo, I said, my voice sharp, unforgiving. My dream is feeding millions sustainably, ethically, and responsibly. There's a profound difference. Dad, finally emerging from his stupor, stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of confusion, a profound sense of shock, and a dawning terrible shame. He seemed to shrink, physically, before my eyes. "Hazel, why? Why didn't you tell us? All this time, you had this empire." "Why?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips, devoid of humor. "Because when I was 12, I built a miniature hydroponic farm, and you barely looked at it. You were too busy celebrating Leo's robotics trophy. Because when I suggested investing in sustainable tech years ago, Mom told me it was too risky and to stick to my stable job, because I wasn't the entrepreneurial type. Because you constantly introduced me as the one who's good with paperwork, the reliable one, while pouring every last cent and all your pride into Leo's endless failures. Because you needed a safety net to catch him, not a daughter to celebrate, to recognize. You told me to stay grounded, so I did. I stayed grounded in reality, in data, in hard work, while you chased fantasies. And I built an empire from the ground up, in silence, in secret, because you never saw me, Dad. Not the real me. You only saw what you wanted to see." Mom began to weep, real tears now, not the performative kind, but tears of genuine remorse, of dawning regret. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. But we always loved you, darling. We just wanted to protect you from the harshness of the world, from the risks. You protected me, all right, I said, my voice laced with steel, cold and unyielding. You protected me from your expectations, from your endless disappointment, from ever daring to ask for your attention. So I stopped asking, and I started building. Building a world where I didn't need your permission, your validation, or your protection. I paused, letting the crushing weight of my words hang in the air. The sounds of their shattered illusions were almost audible. The silence was thick, suffocating. The press conference is in 45 minutes. I continued, checking my watch, a purely professional gesture. I'm heading there directly. And regarding the house, I picked up a thick legal document from the coffee table, a stack of papers with my company's sleek green logo at the top, replacing their ominous bank papers. Viridian Biotech, through a fully owned subsidiary, has purchased your mortgage from the bank. The house is safe, for now. Their heads snapped up, expressions of stunned gratitude warring with their lingering shock. A flicker of hope ignited in their eyes. But this isn't a handout. I continued, my voice firm, leaving no room for misinterpretation. This is an investment. The terms are simple. You will manage this property, maintain it, and keep it in good standing, as a co-steward. And Leo? I turned to my brother, whose face was still a mask of utter disbelief. You will work for the Vance Foundation's new Sustainable Urban Development Program. Not as a visionary, but as a project manager. You will be accountable for every cent, every deadline, every environmental regulation. You will learn responsibility firsthand without the luxury of cutting corners. You will learn what it truly means to build something sustainable, not just something flashy. The Vance Foundation, Leo stammered, still reeling. My philanthropic arm, I explained, a cool, decisive smile playing on my lips. Funded by a significant portion of my recent acquisition. Its mission is to support ethical, sustainable development, invest in overlooked talent, and provide resources for individuals and communities harmed by environmental negligence, especially those impacted by accidental runoff and regulatory breaches. I glanced pointedly at him, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. It's also dedicated to fostering genuine talent and supporting individuals who have been overlooked or undervalued by traditional systems. Like me. Like the true innovators. I looked at my parents. Their faces a roadmap of emotions: regret, relief, confusion, a burgeoning shame. This is your chance to rebuild, not just your finances, but your integrity. To choose real work over empty promises. And to finally see me, not as a safety net, but as an equal. Or perhaps as the one who actually built a future. For all of us. I turned to leave. Dad, his voice choked with emotion, finally spoke. His voice raw with a newfound humility. Hazel, thank you. We didn't know. We truly didn't know. We're so sorry. No, I said, pausing at the door, my hand on the cool brass knob. You didn't, because you never truly looked. It's time for you to start. As I stepped out into the cool Portland air, a sleek black town car was waiting, its engine a silent hum. My head of security, a formidable woman named Ava, a former Special Forces operative who had become my most trusted confidant, opened the door for me. The sound of stunned silence, followed by the muffled, confused arguments and dawning realizations of my family, spilled from the open door behind me. I didn't see a home anymore. I saw a lesson learned, a boundary set, and a truth unleashed. I felt a lightness I hadn't known in decades. The drive to the Viridian Biotech R&D facility was short, peaceful. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, frantic, desperate messages from Mom and Dad, a few bewildered and enraged texts from Leo, and a flurry of emails and calls from industry contacts, all congratulating me on my bold move and stunning unveiling. I ignored them all, focusing on the future. My focus was on the gleaming glass and steel facade of our facility, a monument to years of silent, relentless dedication. The press conference was a blur of flashing lights, whirring cameras, and eager, shouted questions. I stood at the podium, composed and confident, detailing Viridian Biotech's revolutionary technology, our mission for global food security, and our unwavering ethical commitment to environmental stewardship. I spoke about Vitagrow with passion, explaining its complex scientific underpinnings in simple, accessible terms. I articulated our vision for a sustainable future, where vertical farms could feed burgeoning urban populations and drastically reduce agricultural carbon footprints. The media hung on my every word, captivated by the story of the quiet data analyst who had secretly built a billion-dollar empire, a story that was now unfolding in real time. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of Hazel Vance, the stealth biotech billionaire, dominated headlines far beyond the tech and financial sectors. My family's reaction, particularly Leo's EPA fine and their near foreclosure, inevitably became part of the public narrative, albeit in a generalized way, without naming them directly. The irony was not lost on anyone who followed the news. My parents' friends and associates, who had previously nodded along to Leo's exaggerated claims and dismissed my quiet achievements, now saw the full, uncomfortable truth. Their social standing, meticulously built on the shifting sands of Leo's perceived brilliance and their own financial security, began to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny and private shame. Leo, forced into a rigorous, low-level project management role at the Vance Foundation, struggled immensely initially. He resented the oversight, the meticulous accounting, the lack of instant gratification, and the sheer hard work that was required. He tried to charm his way out of responsibilities, to delegate tasks he should have performed himself, to cut corners. But under the firm, unwavering guidance of the Foundation's director, whom I had personally handpicked for his integrity, his no-nonsense approach, and his unwavering commitment to ethical practices, he slowly, painfully, began to learn. There were no shortcuts, no insider tips, no easy escapes, just hard, honest, grinding work. It was a long road, filled with frustrating setbacks and humbling realizations. But for the first time in his life, he was building something tangible, something that actually benefited others, not just himself. He began to understand the true cost of irresponsibility. My relationship with my parents remained strained, but it evolved. They started attending Vance Foundation events, initially out of a sense of obligation, then, gradually, with a glimmer of genuine pride in what I had built. They saw the tangible impact of Viridian Biotech, the lives it touched, the environmental problems it solved. They witnessed the respect I commanded from colleagues, the genuine admiration I received from industry leaders, and even former skeptics. They began to see me, not just as their reliable daughter or their safety net, but as a formidable force, an innovator, a leader. They were still learning, still grappling with their past choices and the implications of my revelation, but the conversation slowly shifted from desperate pleas for money to tentative, sincere questions about my work, about the future of sustainable tech, about my vision. It was a slow, arduous climb, a healing process that would take years, but for the first time in decades, a fragile bridge was being built, brick by agonizing brick, between us. But the true, profound shift happened not with them, but within me. The years of quiet resentment, the gnawing feeling of invisibility, the burning need for validation finally faded. I no longer sought their approval or their validation because I had found my own. My chosen family, Eris, Ava, and the brilliant, dedicated team at Viridian Biotech became my true support system. They were the ones who had believed in my vision, who had seen my true worth, long before the world, or my biological family, did. They celebrated my successes without reservation and supported me through every challenge. I continued to build Viridian Biotech, expanding its reach globally, partnering with governments and NGOs to bring sustainable agriculture to communities in desperate need of food security. My initial motivation, a blend of ambition and a quiet, burning desire for vindication, had transformed into something far greater, a profound purpose. The Vance Foundation became a beacon for overlooked talent, investing in innovators who lacked traditional backing, championing ethical business practices, and funding environmental restoration projects across the globe. We didn't just solve problems, we fostered a new generation of conscious leaders. My life wasn't just about managing a multi-billion-dollar empire anymore. It was about creating a legacy of integrity, of empowering others, of building a future where authenticity was celebrated, not ridiculed. The scars of betrayal remained, faint but present, like the complex, beautiful lines of code that underpinned Viridian reminders of the fierce battle fought and decisively won. But they were overshadowed by a profound sense of peace, self-worth, and unshakable freedom I had found. I learned that true strength isn't about being unscarred, but about how you carry your scars, how you transform pain into purpose. The message I carry, the wisdom etched into my very soul, is this: never let others define your worth, especially when their definition benefits them. Never allow your kindness or generosity to be mistaken for weakness. And never ever let anyone take what is rightfully yours, your dignity, your peace, your self-respect, your legacy just because they are called family. Sometimes, the most powerful act of love is also the most profound act of self-preservation. When you finally stand your ground, when you dare to say no to injustice, even when it comes from your own blood, you don't just reclaim your property or your finances. You reclaim control over your entire life, over your narrative, over your future. And that, I assure you, is the most profound victory of all. I had given them what they truly deserved: the stark, undeniable opportunity to live with the consequences of their own choices, unburdened by my silent strength, unhindered by my presence. And in doing so, I had finally given myself what I truly deserved: a life lived on my own terms, free, whole, and imbued with a renewed purpose. The silence they sought to impose on me became the very space where my truth could finally, gloriously echo through the ages. My legacy would not be defined by their betrayal, but by my resilience, and by the strong ethical foundation I built for Viridian Biotech, ensuring it would continue to flourish for generations to come, built on loyalty, integrity, and innovation, not on lies,